Flat Earth Friday. So the Flat Earthers thought they got the scientists in this one from Jubilee. All right.
Hey guys, welcome back to Middle Ground.
Everybody take a deep breath. We're going to do this together. My voice hurts, so. All right. We're going to do this together. All right. Everybody taking a breath. The Flat Earthers will not give us an aneurysm today. Though they may try, they will not succeed. All right. Now that we've all gone through this together, let's not allow the Flat Earthers to give us an aneurysm.
Hey guys, welcome back to Middle Ground.
Before we jump in, we've got a huge announcement. A lot of folks have been asking for this for years. We're finally giving you the first ever Jubilee podcast called Radical Empathy.
That's right. We are really proud and excited to share it with you guys. It actually features an interview with somebody in this episode. So stick around until the end and we'll tell you more about it.
For now, enjoy the episode.
One on my right here. If you think that is the shape of the earth, point to it now. If you think the other model is the shape of the earth, point to it.
1, 0, all engine run. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Season 6. Oh my god. I don't even know what the fuck this is, but they have at least 6 seasons. Okay.
32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind.
I do think it's a show that just tries to find a middle ground between two opposing views, but still.
I know for a fact that they glow.
You're the spot.
It's like we have this picture of reality that's a big puzzle piece, and then one of those pieces just wasn't fitting.
I'm always open to having a discussion with someone who is holding a wrong belief like this.
I'm not. The evidence is so much. Nobody wants to be a flat earther, but if you showed me incontrovertible evidence, I would definitely go back. Who wants to ridicule?
I'd like to tear them to pieces.
I'd like to tear those scientists to pieces. You know how he's going to do it? He's going to say all the scientists are lying, they're making shit up, and they don't know what they're talking about. They're just feeding us lies because they're a bunch of liars. That's why they're always running around with their pants on fire.
When the sun goes down, the
Oh.
turns up. Escape
Ooh.
on the all-new Dark Coaster.
Ooh, let's all stand in lines all day for seconds of entertainment.
50%.
I'm Jim Underdown, Executive Director.
Yeah, see, they just bring people together who have opposing views, try to get them to talk to each other. It's not always a flat earth thing. The thing is, trying to do this all the time with views that are so diametrically opposed that people hold a strong belief in has got to be insanely exhausting. And they've been doing this for at least 6 seasons. Because this is the 5th episode of season 6 from this episode. So, holy shit.
Director of the Center for Inquiry
That would be
West
exhausting.
in Los Angeles, and the chair of the CFI investigation.
I'm Spencer Marks, one of the senior members of the CFI Investigations Group, Science Advocate.
I'm Madina Yeri. I'm a theoretical physicist, and I'm with the University of Irvine.
I'm Wendell Walton. I'm a Chief Learning Officer for a young startup.
I'm Shelley Lewis. I'm a graduate of West Point, critical thinker, and jumped out of airplanes.
My name is Dan Glatman. I work as Dan the Waterman in the drinking water filtration industry and a truth seeker.
A bunch of people with zero background that would aid in investigating anything through a lens of science. But for somebody who jumps out of airplanes to think the world is flat is quite interesting to me. Okay, in the light. Okay.
Well, I've been a Christian for 30 years, so the Bible is a flat Earth book. You have to.
It's not true. I've seen a lot of flat earthers make this argument, and it's just simply not true.
To take it literally, like for example in Isaiah, when it talks about how the earth is like a clay wax seal that's stamped with upturned edges, that's just not some fancy story. That's a simile. It is like.
Right, absolutely. And in Isaiah talks about too, and I'm Christian, he who sits upon the circle of the earth. There's a difference between a circle and a ball.
Well, exactly. Yeah. If you look at the original Hebrew, it means disc. There's over 200 scriptures in the Bible that point to a flat earth.
And that's because you're making it fit that way. That's why. Because you see, the thing is, the two things are not required to exist with each other. They don't need one another to exist. This is just taking your belief and making it fit what you want it to fit. And it's also just ignoring the fact that this portion of the story comes from a time when people didn't know anything. They couldn't read, they couldn't write, they didn't know math, but they're going to understand the workings of the world. And they shared this thought process of you live on a circle because you look at the sky and the sky is what you see moving, but not understanding perception or perspective. And so they just don't have that. And everybody at the time feels that, or holds the same belief. So why, of course it would come across as a way that you're going to be able to spin it and be like, no, it has to obviously be this way because it said so from a point in time thousands and thousands of years ago. That's just because it's the way they chose to interpret what was given.
So this notion that you need God or some other power to create the earth or the universe is very old and was initially posited by people of a pre-scientific age. Since then, we have learned quite a bit about the universe coming into existence, when that happened. Modern humans don't get their cosmology, they don't get their physics, they don't get their knowledge of the universe from the Bible or any ancient text.
See, and here's the issue from the science perspective, because they always just try to discount it and like, well, we know better. Here's the issue with that. The laws of physics state that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It simply just transfers, right? Then where was the energy for the Big Bang before it ever happened and there was no universe? And what happened to it afterward? Where did it go? So there's nothing, but there's a bang. See, that doesn't work either. See, there's a certain point where science does not have an answer. It just simply doesn't. And that's simply the way it is. The fact that you can't possibly tell me how that happened, because there was nothing and then there was a big bang, and that's how we exist. How did that happen then? You have to have something that is beyond the scope of the laws of physics and the laws of nature. in order to make that happen, which is the creation story of science. But they ignore that portion that is still missing. Just there was nothing, but all of a sudden there was a bang and you had everything. That's not how it works according to the laws of nature and science.
It's sort of like the God of the gaps. People used to believe that lightning was God's wrath and throwing his lightning bolts, but once we understood it was a natural process, God shrank a little bit more because now we couldn't attribute those lightning bolts to God. We had to attribute that to the real science. The other thing, the point about the Bible specifically for me is, why is that one particular text the correct one? You choose to believe that, and that's fine, but there's so many other writings and so many other books, so why weren't they correct? Why is just the Bible correct?
Well, what you'll find in a lot of these ancient religions is they're all flat earth religions. All their cosmology goes back to being a flat earth with an enclosed system. So it's not just the Bible that teaches this.
And once again, it's very simple. This happens because if you stand on the ground and look up to the sky and you don't have light pollution, the stars look like they move in a circle around us. And that's because of perspective. It's not because of the reality of the universe. It's because of perspective. But when you don't have the tools or the simple just knowledge of how to do math, you're not going to be able to think about perspective because you don't have any way to make it make sense at all.
It's many different religious books.
So one problem I have is to trying to explain phenomena happening in nature by holy books. Those are religious books. Those are not books of science. And it is wrong to infer.
I completely disagree when people separating books of religion and books of science. Science is very much so treated like a religion by the people who prescribe to it with absolutes. It is treated the exact same way that a religion is treated when you take it to these levels every time.
Or deduct scientific readings out of those books.
My name is Wendell. I am a logical, biblically based, and scientific flat earther. I didn't start out, and no one starts out as a flat earther, but I had a lot of questions. So I actually got to the point where I had to go out and put my own eyeballs on it. So we went out to an observation at Salton Sea, and things just didn't add up down there. So we've gone back probably a dozen times, and I can guarantee you that there is no curvature of a distance.
The internet has played an important role in confirming my view of this topic.
See, and we did the math on it, remember? By the time that on a clear day, lower sediment in the air, so you have optimal visibility. By the time you're seeing the horizon that the human eye is capable of perceiving, the objects on that horizon are only about 12. Wasn't it 12 feet of distance lower than you are? So when you're seeing things that are at that distance, like a city skyline, you're still going to see it because those buildings are more than 12 feet tall, and they're only losing 12 feet of height at that distance. And beyond there, the human eye simply cannot perceive what is at that distance. And actually, I believe that wasn't actually the human eye, that was a telescope. So I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was actually a telescope.
We have the advantage of information today that's outside of channels 2, 4, and 7 and the few networks that are corporately owned. It's pretty easy to say YouTube isn't research, but when you spend enough time, you're picking up quite a bit. And with the discussion groups, panels, we've gone against opposition. We've opposed ourselves. Surprisingly enough, Flat Earth is its own worst enemy. So it's not that easy for us to come to consensus. And we find that consensus is orchestrated and not actually scientific in any way.
You know, my grandfather used to tell me growing up never believe anything you read in the newspaper, right? He told that to me. Now, with the age of the internet, it's like, how much of this misinformation are you getting there? And when you have like eyewitnesses taking video of something, you do have to take everything with a grain of salt. That's why, because of my my multimedia background, I knew that all that stuff could be faked. Take it into Photoshop, take it into After Effects.
Okay, I was expecting her to say something too, and I thought I'd just let her talk first. Anyways, they're not entirely wrong. When you've got access to the internet, you have access to knowledge. The thing is, you also have access to wrong information, to bad information. You have access to misinformation. It's more easy to get people introduced to beliefs that are not true. It's easier to get people introduced into things that are... It's like judging a book by its cover. It's got a really pretty cover. Oh my God! And then you open it and it's Twilight, and you read it and you're just sad that you've wasted your life reading such a shitty story that's put together so terribly bad. And yet, that's what it is. A very pretty cover. They present this thing to you. It looks like it makes a lot of sense. It's got people in it who seem like they care about you and like they care in general, and they make you feel welcome, and they make you feel like this is a good place to be. Meanwhile, it's a book of bullshit. So, that's the problem, is you're also exposed to bad information. You have to become an expert of researching. That way you're able to find information and go, maybe, but I've also heard the opposite, right, my whole life, so let me see where they're getting this information at. And you have to check their sources. You have to compare the source material that each group is pulling their information from and decide which side is the more accurate, more valid, and more trustworthy. Because the fact is, there are people who are not in control that want to be in control. And because they're not in control, they feel like the people who are in control have orchestrated keeping them away from control. And the people who feel this way will manipulate you on the internet to make you feel as if they're giving you the correct information so that you tear down that entire structure that was built by these people that they hold a grudge against.
This is my gaming room.
So basically, just be careful with what you see on the internet and believing it. You need to figure out where the information's coming from and if those people are trustworthy. You have to really be vigilant on verifying your sources with information. Now, it's freedom comes with responsibility, and this is one of the responsibilities of having just free access to a vast wealth of information.
Okay, this is at the core of the issue of why there are so many flat earth believers out there right now. The problem is the information from someone who decides to start a website or produce a YouTube video is not reliable. When I have a toothache, I go to a dentist. When my car breaks down, I go to a mechanic. When you have questions about cosmology, you should go to an astrophysicist, you should go to a physicist, you should go to people who have spent years and years studying these ideas, not some 6-minute YouTube video. There is a
He's right. He's also wrong. We'll explain later.
percentage of people that if they saw a YouTube video that was not within their scientific
'Cause you might catch
science
it.
to refute,
I doubt it, though.
would believe anything out there.
One of the things I'll say is NASA.gov has their own documents out there that we get to vet, which is through the Freedom of Information Act. And would you agree that NASA documents, if they're on display, that we should be able to go and research inside there?
NASA is not proving that the Earth is flat.
Well, they say it in 14 of the
you
documents.
should read what NASA says, and you should listen to what
I
NASA
would
says.
love to see your NASA evidence that the Earth is
It's
flat.
only those contradictory issues
Okay,
that
let's
bring
see.
us here. We're all familiar with the Earthrise photo, right? The Earth is rising over the moon. We're all familiar with it. It's NASA. You can go out to the NASA site. You can download the original, right?
I already know what you're going to ask.
So you bring up the luminance on it, and you can see where it's cut out and pasted there.
They're showing us doctored images that are clearly doctored. The blue marble is a very famous image from 1972. When you talk to the artist from NASA, his name is Robert Simmons, he talks about exactly how it was created from data, and it's not a photograph whatsoever. He added clouds.
Let me explain.
He added a highlight of the
If
sun.
you take, on your phone, most phones have that panoramic image. When you do that, you're taking a series of pictures, and the phone cleverly stitches that together.
How it's
Hold on.
presented. It's presented as a real
So
photograph.
when NASA takes real photos and they either clean them up for color or they stitch them together so it's one large image, it doesn't mean they're CGI.
You're talking about composites.
Good Lord. I'm going to let them hash that out. So the way that the scientist was wrong is that, here, we'll go back to it.
The percentage of people that if they saw a YouTube video that was not within their scientific chops to refute on the face of it would believe anything out there.
See, he almost caught it and didn't. Almost there, didn't catch it. See, the problem is, yes, you could watch YouTube videos and you could just be caught into this belief and, oh man, it's so exciting and I like to know this thing that I feel other people don't know, so it makes me special. Like I know something you don't know, right? It's a thing within our minds. It's a human flaw just in the way we're created. The thing is, you have to also, to be effective in any one of these capacities that these 6 people have, wanting to be in this argument of the Earth is flat or the Earth is round. If you're looking at scientific documents, you're watching videos and reading papers and listening to people theorize based off things that they've seen come up from NASA, etc., etc. If you're not open and willing to being wrong about the belief that you hold when you're looking at information, you're going to discard the things that say you're wrong, and you're going to take the things that say you're correct and put them up on a pedestal like they're more solid pieces of information than they may be. So you're not going to give anything that makes your belief feel bad. Oops, didn't mean to smack the microphone. But you're going to do whatever you can. Something's going to happen where you read something, say you're one of the scientists, right? And NASA releases something that says, look, we believe that the Earth may be hollow in the center, and the magma core revolves around that central point that connects the North and South poles. And then you could be like, no, the whole core is magma. Because you're saying this one time, and people have said this 1,000 times, and the tests help prove this point. You're simply going to discard everything that says that you're wrong, and that it's more of a donut shape. Not a true donut, but just more of a donut type shape, because you essentially have this thing in the core that connects, or aligns rather, would be a better word. It aligns to the north and south poles of the Earth, and the magma rotates around that. It doesn't go all the way out to the crust. It's just around the core. We've never gone that deep down. So science hasn't disproven it, but anything that could be presented to challenge your theory of this, you just know and discard it, right? You're not even giving it an opportunity. The same goes on if you believe the Earth is flat, right? Oh, well, NASA's doctoring the photos. Well, they're doing a panorama picture, essentially, because they're just taking snapshots of segments. Is typically how they do this when they get the whole Earth, is they do segmented shots. So it fills in like a panorama where it takes a picture, and as you spin, it takes multiple little pictures, right? So that's basically what's happening. So you end up with little gaps And NASA stitches, right? They sew together the images so that they line up correctly. Little gyrations or movements in the satellite's position from the Earth, because it's not like it's perfectly at the exact same altitude, at the exact same angle all the time. While they're falling through space, circling the Earth constantly because of the Earth's gravitational pull on it, while the Earth is constantly falling through space, circling around the sun because of the pull that the sun has on the Earth. So, you never collide, just swings you around and slingshots you constantly. That's what an orbit is. So, they hear that and go, that's make-believe. You'd get launched into the vast emptiness of space, right? Why? Because they don't want to listen to the evidence of how that works. It challenges their belief. And when it challenges the belief of whatever you hold, it makes you feel bad. It makes you feel dumb. It makes you feel like an idiot. It makes you feel like you're gullible and less than. So it makes you look down on yourself. So your natural response is to reject it. So if you're not open to being wrong and just going, damn, that sucks, that hurts, that feels bad, but maybe they're right and I have to fix this so that I don't feel that way anymore. If that's not your perspective, you're not going to give things a fair shot to even just be correct. So it's something you've got to be conscious of, regardless of where you fall on an issue. If you just hold very strong beliefs and you're not willing to listen to the other side, you're not willing to be wrong, you're just discarding information constantly.
It even get me into a virtual construct if I can't find the borders myself. It appears to me to be a stationary plane, as opposed to the vastness of infinity of space. I would find it to be an ice plane where we have a localized sun and our environment thrives there. You know, these particular people have misled us on television. This is a brilliant opportunity to speak. We've been suppressed, censored by mainstream media. Alternative media is just a thing of beauty for me.
See, basically what he went through saying here is that the other side has been manipulating us. Therefore, whenever I hear somebody from the alternate side who says the same thing, it makes me feel good. So I don't have to reject the things that make me feel bad and the ideas attached to them. Instead, I just have to keep embracing and stating that I believe and agree with the people that make me feel good. It's just surrounding yourself by yes men, which doesn't ever lead you to success, being better, getting further ahead, being smarter, etc., etc., etc.
Well,
they're going to redefine educated. Here's the thing. All 6 of them are educated. All 6 of them. They just don't agree. And these 3 here are going to be more strongly attached to their belief than the other 3 because of the fact that science is constantly running the experiment you ran to see if it comes out to the same result. By people who disagree with you all the time. They'll find something else out doing the same thing and they'll be like, hey, look, I think you're wrong and this is why. And if you make these alterations to the way you're doing it in order to simulate these things that you just didn't factor in, maybe it slipped your mind, maybe you were unaware, whatever it may be, it disproves your entire theory. Or maybe an advancement, say, in the study of whatever it may be, shows that we can do something that we weren't doing before because we have an understanding of how this thing moves that impacts it that we didn't understand in the past. Maybe it's just the way that the light from the sun interacts with whatever it is you're working with, and nobody thought that the light from the sun was having an impact on it, aside from just expansion, contraction from heat and cold. And that's it. Whereas the direct sunlight's having an impact. So then when you factor that in, it disproves your theory on how this thing will operate if it's implemented. So scientists are going to not just think that the people who are opposed to them are uneducated, because they're constantly being challenged by people who are educated. And that's what this is. They're being challenged by people who are educated. These people believe that they have secret knowledge that makes them special. They believe they have knowledge of something that's being kept away from everybody else, and that makes them smarter or more advanced than other people, or have better insight than people who disagree with them. So they look down on their opposition. They're constantly doing it. And the reason I know this is because if you watch the flat earth things that they believe and that they get their information from, it's presented in that way. It's presented in a way that builds up that mindset and thought process about the information.
I certainly think they're educated, and they're following quite a bit of the university system, what we call scientism.
Right, scientism.
Obviously, is the belief in what's written, where we tend to be exploring in the field with physical properties, not theories of any kind. We're using actual measurements that are calculated not by our guidelines, but the guidelines of science as we know it. I can only hope they're uneducated as opposed to disingenuous.
Well, that's the other thing too, because we know that it was on a large scale. The government has been disingenuous, and they're pushing a narrative, right? So it's hard for us. I mean, I'm sure that you've met people too. It's like, look, are you haven't looked into it yet, or are you a shill? Are you part of the disinformation campaign?
See, they spin the opposition to be someone who cannot be trusted, cannot be believed. They're just liars and making up everything, right? Or, I didn't even include this because I just hate the word shill, but that is another possibility for them to just discredit you because you disagree. See, this is what I mean. They look down on the people who oppose their belief. Therefore, they think they have a better sense of the knowledge, a privileged sense of the knowledge. They know something you don't know, etc., and so forth.
I don't think you guys are uneducated. I think you're wrongly educated.
I think the problem with...
No. They're properly educated and poorly informed. That's what it is. They've got a very good education and poor information.
What I've seen in the flat
They just don't know who to trust or how to figure out who to
educated,
trust.
They, instead of looking at evidence and letting the evidence guide to where the ultimate conclusion is, they start with a conclusion and then they try to cherry pick evidence to support their pre-drawn conclusion. They cast away all the bits of evidence that actually is contrary to their belief system.
I think that you're very well educated as well as you are, Jim.
Certainly Ali is trying to get the best education of all of us.
Exactly, and he paid for it too. But more and more professionals are coming on board. They're starting to question their reality. So the thing of it is once you start to really take a hard look at the evidence, and you are unafraid of just standing for the truth wherever that may lead you, then people end up becoming flat earthers.
See, he was right up until he said people start becoming. Because once you guys made that choice, you stopped thinking you could be wrong. At least in the situation of these 6 individuals in this show.
I'm hoping to be able to tell our side of the story from the inside out. So many times, flat earthers are depicted from the outside in, and I want to be able to share with others empirical data that proves the earth is not what we've been told.
All the flat earthers.
Knowing that a product that I'm going to be making is going to be in the hand.
All the flat earthers are going to go sit down. That's how this is going to go. They're going to be like, yeah, I changed my mind from thinking the earth was round and being correct to being wrong. Because I was convinced that this is the right way. Because that's what happens. It's fucking weird. Why is this an ad? Go away.
So when I was 12 years old, I went to space camp, and I met Alan B. Shepard.
Oh, nice.
Yep, and I wanted to be an astronaut, and I wanted to be the first woman to walk the moon.
Oh.
So for me, I'm a glober. I went into this completely wanting it to be true. And my husband told me, he saw this thing about the fake moon landing. And I was like, you're absolutely crazy. There's no way that the moon landings are fake. And then in 2010, my husband was killed. And so I never really developed that until around 2014 when Flat Earth kind of came back up. And that little voice inside my head said, remember the fake moon landings? Remember when that was brought to my attention? And then I started really critically analyzing that. And I would say, just looking at that evidence, if they can lie about the moon landings, they can certainly lie about pictures and satellites and other things. And so I started going down that rabbit hole of studying. So that was my influence from my husband.
How many lies does it take to make a liar, right?
Being ridiculed for being inquisitive is pretty tough on us. I wouldn't say that I've changed my mind because my mind isn't set. NASA is solely designed to change my mind. It is, from its inception, from its discovery, has been a television program. It's been a space program to sell us on something that they've yet to actually show us. Show me a globe spinning with clouds and a moon. Show me home, and I think I could shut up easily. I think I could shut up.
Wouldn't that be nice if you could shut up? Anyways, the whole thing right there. Oh my God. The government keeps a lot of things secret. They lie about a lot of stuff. Yes. Some of this is justified. Some of this they justify under a false pretense. Every government does it. Now, there are certain things around the astronauts and moon landings that we know for a fact have been faked. Like the photo that was taken from when they were training, and then they mirror imaged it and blacked out the equipment and said that this was a space photo, right? That undeniably has happened. That it's crazy as fuck, but that is how they did it, right? So they do doctor up and show fake photos. That doesn't mean you don't go to the moon. Doesn't mean you don't put stuff in space. You have to understand with our fears of what the radiation in space would actually do without the safety of the magnetic field that keeps us safe from that radiation. We don't know that the cameras are going to work. We don't know that the film isn't going to get burned out. Right? Because if you just opened your camera and exposed the film to the sun before you had it developed, you fried your photos. Remember when we had the little photo rolls? So we didn't know that it would work, that we'd be able to develop a camera that was actually going to work until we had one. But they still needed to prove we were doing stuff before the USSR, because it was a huge political thing, like a huge political stunt. So, of course, we have evidence that's been doctored. Doesn't mean we weren't doing things. It just means that we did doctor things to convince our opponents of something that we were doing, even if the equipment failed. It's ridiculous. The whole thing about that is just, it's pretty damn ridiculous.
The timing of your conversions is interesting to me. 20 years ago, the flat Earth world was tiny and insignificant.
Yeah.
After the advent of the internet, YouTube, online discussion groups, all these new available places where you could find information about everything.
This is true that the evidence as you looked were not a robust evidence. And the sources you used, they were not reliable sources again. But my problem is that
the ability to verify sources is paramount.
But at the same time, you're not skeptical about your belief system. That should have come first.
You think that that's my foundation for why I believe the earth is flat, and I'm telling you, you're wrong.
Okay.
I have evidence that proves it's flat.
What type of evidence?
It's not evolved.
What type of evidence?
We're being misled. We're being deliberately misled by mainstream
Now,
media.
what's your evidence?
We see too far. We see too far. We should not be able to see. I live in Dana Point.
Okay.
I can see San Clemente Island, which is 60 miles away.
What do you mean, so what?
No, I'm
It's
on the
1100
beach.
feet
I'm on the
tall.
beach.
It is
What do you mean
tall.
by so what?
I'm on
But-
the beach.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you see a ship which is going?
What are
Oh
you
yeah,
talking
let's talk about the ship that goes
Yes.
over the curvature
Okay.
of the earth. I love
So-
it. So science has said that when I see a ship go out of my field of view, it's going over the curvature of the earth, correct?
Yes.
But then I bring my P900 up, and guess what? I can zoom it back in.
Not
So
all
is
the
it
time.
going over the curvature of the earth or
can't.
not?
Absolutely.
Oh, not all the time? Not all the time?
Once again, you're not seeing it not because it goes over the curvature of the Earth. You're not seeing it because the human eye cannot see far enough. It actually has to go an incredibly far distance before the curvature of the Earth will completely take it out of your line of sight. Your line of sight goes far further than your effective vision. If you're standing on a mountaintop, your line of sight is unobstructed until it runs into something that's as tall as where you're standing from sea level to where you're at on the top of that mountain. That building or that other mountain, whatever it is, would have to be the same height or taller. And you couldn't have something that's smaller behind something that's larger because that's going to block your line of sight. So let's say you're standing on top of a mountain and you can see over the hilltop in front of you for the next mountain, but the mountain behind that is too tall for you to see past. So that's the end of your line of sight. Right there where it hits that. But if you turn 45 degrees, you're looking down a valley and you can see you can watch the sunset. That just means that there's not something that's obstructing your view. Now, if you're standing on the beach and you're looking out over the ocean, your vision is not going to go as far as the ocean is going to be vast until it reaches a shore in that direction you're looking and you have land, right? Once you have that, there you go. Now, if you pull out something like her camera and you zoom in, or a telescope and you look across, you're extending your field of vision, your effective viewing range. You're extending it. You're not changing your line of sight. You're just extending what your eye can perceive in the distance. Because the human eye is not at all adapted to look at extreme distances. An eagle or a hawk, if you could look through the eyes of an eagle or a hawk in your own head on that beach, you would see much, much further than you do with your own human eyes. This argument maddens me because they don't understand that with the curvature of the earth and how large the earth is, you have to go an incredible distance to lose sight of something that is much taller than you, like the sails on a ship or the stacks that the steam comes out of on a steamship, right? You have to go a very, very far distance to get that ship to be far enough away that the curvature of the Earth cancels out the height of that ship versus your height looking at the horizon.
So you don't see all the ship. The bottom part of the ship is hidden by the
At that
curvature.
distance, you shouldn't see the top
At
of it
all.
either.
If the Earth were truly flat, there would be really hardly any limit. You would be able to stand at the
You shouldn't see any of it at all. But if I can't see any portion of the ship at all, then the Earth is not flat. That is also true. Just because you can see the mast that the sail is on, but you can't see the rest of the ship, even through a telescope that's extending your range as far as possible, you're not going to see the ship, right? Well, then what hit it on a flat Earth model? They're just on a flat plane of ocean, right? But you can see the sail, but you can't see the rest of the ship. Well, then what happened to the rest of the ship? It must be behind the horizon, which means that there's a curve. See, like they don't complete the thought process of what he was just heading down with his own explanation.
top of the Empire State Building and look towards Chicago, a mere 1,000 miles away, and see the lights of Chicago at night.
No,
Why wouldn't
because
you?
you have an atmospheric disturbance.
Very thick. I've been into astronomy since I was 10.
It's faulty logic. It's completely faulty logic. Okay.
One of the big things I do is investigate extraordinary claims like flat eartherism or ESP or all sorts of different things. The Earth is undoubtedly a globe and not flat. This is well supported by gobs of science.
This is the real deal.
I don't think the flat earthers are even going to understand what that means.
What is the question?
I don't understand the question.
Scientific consensus is possible.
Possible. Anything is possible. I mean, anything is possible. I've got a tremendous issue with consensus and peer review. I've been spending a lot of time arguing with people that argue.
So the peer review and consistency comes from constantly testing and retesting over and over again. It's why you have to, like when you take science in school and you have to do your labs, the reason your lab reports have to be so specific and detailed is because you're leaving behind the data of your experiment so somebody else can come along, look at what you did and go, so you did this experiment and you found a way to make fire from water. That sounds crazy. How the hell did you do that? I'm going to see if this really works. And then they can do the same thing you did under the same conditions and see if it happens for them as well. That's how that works. That is peer review. The other form of peer review and consensus that you get comes from just comparing what you're doing to similar things that have been done and the known and proven laws of science, physics, and nature, right? So, and how you get to those being called laws is through an incredibly large amount of consensus through peer review of, we've not been able to disprove this at all. Maybe once or twice, and then when we reviewed those ones, we found these flaws of things that they did not do, things that they changed that made the difference not work. And here's how we know that was why. That is how that process works.
The other side. And I found that surprisingly, consensus always wins. It was shocking to me that the group with the majority has an incredible advantage.
It is flawed.
Scientists, flat earthers, truthers, punks.
See, and it is very flawed because if you have a theory that is very, very dominant, like the global Earth, right? Incredibly dominant theory, gotta say. And the reason that it's incredibly dominant is because of how long it's been challenged and how long it's been coming out on top. However, what he is saying about this is correct. Because the scientific community has so much support for that theory, having a scientist seriously trying to prove a flat Earth is going to be laughed at by the community. It's not going to be taken seriously by the community, and the community is just going to shove it off to the side, and it's going to smear that scientist's reputation entirely for anything else that they do for the rest of their career. And anything they did prior as well. So there is that issue with the way that consensus works. It does play a role in human societal behavior tendencies that is not favorable.
We're an incredible disadvantage.
Let's talk about scientific consensus for a second. You're never going to get 100% of anyone.
No, you don't.
There is scientific consensus on a global Earth. There's scientific consensus on evolution. A lot of big issues.
Use the word theory.
Do you know what a theory in science is? An extremely
and a fact
Let
is
me,
a fact.
Don't mistake this word theory.
You are
in
not
science.
me.
It's not conjecture. It's not.
It's an explanation. Is it by definition? It's an explanation.
See, and this is a problem as well. See, he's now facing information that makes him feel bad because it doesn't align with his beliefs. So what he's doing now is he's arguing, he's cutting people off and become defensive because it makes him feel bad. What they're saying is making him feel bad. So now it's the second time now that they've had something spark up like this, right? So what's happened is, since this has sparked up the way it has so quickly, well, not so quickly, but so frequently since the last time, the thing is, he's now on defense mode.
It's a deep.
Well, let's talk
So this
about
is
a fact.
something
Show me a
people
fact.
made a mistake.
Why
They
aren't
think
all
theory
facts
is-
theories?
In science, the word theory is the
And these scientists are not helping. How all three of them, like these other two, jumped in as well is also not helpful. It's the same exact issue as the other guy cutting the scientists off. It's the exact same problem, just from the other side.
highest level that you can give something because it's so well supported.
What about a fact?
That is a fact. It's
Not a fact you would call it.
You
a
know
fact.
why? Do you know why? Because in science, there's always room for improvement. There's always room to find to tweak and find better information.
So that is how science works.
It gets better, refined over time, as opposed to flat Earth theory, which never gets refined. It simply is what it is.
New ideas have limited access to media and limited exposure. Until we're in university curriculums, we will continue to appear uneducated.
Oh, that's not true. In the history of science, we had many occasions that the idea it was not welcomed by the society. Einstein was one of them. Galileo was one of them. But if
It's
your
true.
theory is an authentic one, and it can go through this hardship of scientific method, eventually will win.
I used to.
See, and he phrased that very, very perfectly, emphasized it specifically. Eventually, that theory will win, if it is correct, because it has to stand the test of time. That's why I said it's an incredibly long, huge amount of time that's required for these things to be called laws of science and nature, physics, and all these things. It'll be a theory for sometimes hundreds of years, 1,000 years, until it's stood the test of time well enough to be accepted. That's how science works. It depends on the theory, how hard it's investigated, and how well it stands up against opposition. But like I said, there is the weird little social thing too with consensus. The problem is with that, it's not a factor in the flat Earth debate because everybody believed the Earth was flat and then were convinced it was round over the vast amount of information that was presented time and time and time again, that it was challenged and proven and challenged and proven and researched over and over and over again for an incredibly long amount of time.
Believe that science was after the truth, right? We all just want to know what the truth is. Science has been trying so hard to divorce itself from the idea of a creator when God's intent was to create science to lead you to Him. You know, sometimes things seem supernatural that we are able to explain later through, science. Okay, I understand. But there are other things as well that are supernatural.
So now, and here's the thing, is what he's saying is correct. Scientists use science to discard God or any form of a creator or higher being. And a lot of people who are non-theistic or non-religious or hold their own private belief or whatever it may be do the same thing. Now, the problem with this is that it doesn't do that. And a lot of people, because of the way that the science community goes about this and the people who aren't really in the science community but use science to justify their own non-belief as a religion, is it created this issue where you have people on the opposite end of it from the religious end, from the theist end of things, where they will try to use their belief to discard and discredit science. When you could point to anything from science, and you could point to anything from any religion, and I would strongly argue that the two are not mutually exclusive at all. Especially when you look at Abrahamic religion. Their very creation myths state that mankind was made in the image of God. Therefore, eventually, we would be capable of understanding creation. Eventually, we have that potential within us. Nothing else does, according to that belief, right? Do we see other beings running around doing that shit? No, we don't. We don't. We don't see anything else on this planet creating things and searching out the meaning of life or existence. Nothing else does that. We see other things that are very smart, but nothing that is that cognitively creative or intellectual in that way. Nothing else exhibits that kind of effort. We're the only ones who do. So like I said, it's not mutually exclusive, and that is just simply one example. But it bothers me when people try to hold things so mutually exclusive, especially the people on like the science end of it who claim that they don't believe in a religion, but they will hold up science as a religion to ward off religion.
They go beyond the natural that we can always explain through believing in a creator, right?
This is my big issue with science, scientific approach and non-scientific approach. You are absolutely right. In science, we are after the truth. And we are hoping by each day we're getting closer and closer to the truth. We never get there. Never.
Well, I know that's true for you.
No, that's a science. That's you guys. You think you do have the truth. Now let's look at the evidences. As you were mentioning, you do have the conclusion. Let's find the evidences. Science doesn't work that way.
Exactly.
But you are saying you are referring.
That is what they are doing. They're saying, but we have evidence of falsehoods, so we are correct. It's not true. Just because somebody is lying with this image saying that it took place at a specific place and time for a specific event, and it wasn't there, does not mean that that specific event at that specific place and time did not occur. It just means that that picture was not taken there, that that video was not from there, or it wasn't at that time. That's all that that means. It doesn't disprove that we ever did the thing that is claimed in the first place.
Referring to Jesus, whom many billions of people do not believe, including myself.
And many more billions do.
So what?
So who's right?
Of course I can know.
See, and this is my point. You can't just argue it theistically. It's ridiculous to try and do. It's the reason that these two hold this belief, which is, it should already throw up some flags. Because what you're saying is God created one specific place for us to be on, and it's so special that everything else in all of creation revolves around special us. That's insanely narcissistic. Insanely narcissistic. On the other side, to just completely discard it because you have science instead, that's really not better. It's a different issue. It's not necessarily narcissism, but it is still an issue. Like, there's a certain amount of, well, maybe they're the ones who are right and you're the ones who are wrong. But on the issue of the earth being round, you're correct and they are wrong. But in the issue of a higher being existing and creating everything, they were correct and you were wrong. That is entirely possible. But because you don't believe in their God, then why should you listen to anything, right? It's a problem. It's the exact same problem all over again.
You say that we start with a conclusion and then try to match everything to make it work. Like, that to me is complete dishonesty. That is not true at all.
That is what you are doing
No,
right
you're
now.
not. You're making that assumption,
No,
which I
it's
think
not an
science does a
assumption.
lot of. So do you make assumptions or not? Does science make assumptions? Does science make
Yeah,
assumptions?
sure.
Okay.
We do make assumptions
They do. It's called a hypothesis.
based on things that are well supported and proven and reproven. We don't have
Show
to.
me how you isolate gravity. If gravity
We
is
don't
an
have to-
assumption, you show me in the scientific method how you isolate gravity.
Yeah, sure.
You're like a moron to understand conclusions require education.
I just want to check in. How are you guys feeling? How is this discussion going?
I kind of feel like I want to develop.
Oh, this discussion's going terribly because you got 6 people who who evenly agree with each belief that is diametrically opposed to the other belief. So you've got 2 groups of people who are diametrically opposed on the issue that you're having them discuss. And they are also all too stubborn and headstrong to possibly be wrong on their belief. You knew it wasn't going to go great from the get-go, the way you set it up.
Develop some of this stuff a little bit more. It feels high level, but I feel like there's so much that I haven't really even touched base on.
Well, I mean, I certainly didn't think that anybody was going on either side was going to flip.
Well, there's still time.
There's still time. I have hope for you, Wendell. And Sheldon. I don't know about Dan. I have hope for you too. But, you know, it's certainly, I'm glad it's a civil discussion, certainly.
Oh, yeah.
Would you watch the sun?
You want to say?
He flipped! Wendell, welcome aboard. Welcome.
The greatest moment in television history.
How did he fuck that up? My God, dude, no way. Like, how did he fuck that up? Just ended up on the other end of it. Jesus. No, they're not. And none of them are going to say that it's not trustworthy for the reason I don't think it's trustworthy. And my issue of trustworthiness does not extend to the shape of the earth. I just don't trust an organization that was put together, led, and staffed by World War II bad guys that were brought over to America under false pretenses as to who the hell they were.
I made that at home.
So, I mean, obviously any organization can be wrong with certain things, and they may have individuals that lie or deceive or something, but as a general organization, they're looking for the truth.
Yeah, the idea that NASA and the government is lying to us about the shape of the Earth is the height of conspiracy theories. In order for this to be true, the literally hundreds of thousands of people who at some point over the last 50 or 60 years would had to be somewhat complicit in this, and nobody spills the beans at all, is on the face of it completely unbelievable.
The private does not know what the general is doing. There's compartmentalization
It's true.
happening all the time.
Of course.
So it
It's
wouldn't
true.
be far-fetched. Has the government ever lied to us is really the question at stake.
We all agree on that.
Yes, but now we have NASA.gov, right? And absolutely, they're not lying about anything. They're completely transparent. Everything is true. We'd be foolish to
There's
think
a
that's
difference
true.
here. I'm sorry. This is a fallacy here. There is
Not a fallacy.
I'm sure it is.
Go
See,
ahead.
you were talking about a government. Now you're talking about an agency of the government.
NASA.gov.
But this agency is scrutinized by thousands and thousands of scientists around the globe. You are dealing with smart people, believe me. You are dealing with smart people.
I don't deny that.
So it is very hard to do that. Once or twice, maybe. Not for the whole time.
See, the problem is what he's saying there, right? They would have to be not just, oh, yeah, here's a lie, here's a lie. They'd have to be like, oh, here's a lie, and we're gonna keep on telling it since the time that we brought over Wernher von Braun and put him in charge of the damn place. Right? So, and let's be honest, if you're looking at the people like Wernher von Braun that was put in charge of it, and you know his history and from World War II, kind of comes from a whole agency of lying. A whole group of people that came from a background of lying, deceiving, and manipulating an entire population of people into believing certain things. That's the issue with trusting NASA specifically. Now, once again, I don't think NASA's lying about the Earth being round, because it's been proven mathematically. It's been proven through demonstration. It's been proven through visual evidence. There are so many things that show the Earth is round in various ways throughout all the years that it's undeniably the way it is. They have plenty of reason for you to be skeptical of what they're saying. The fact that they're a branch of the government, be skeptical. Absolutely. Be skeptical. It doesn't mean they're lying to you about everything. Not at all. In fact, the majority of things they're lying to you about are done under the pretense of it's helping keep people safe and alive. And in a lot of ways, that's exactly what it is. It might not be directly what you're expecting that to mean, but in a lot of ways, that's exactly what that information's doing and why it's kept a secret, and why they lie to you about it or mislead you about what's going on, is to protect those secrets. But if you want the truth beyond those secrets without having access to that knowledge, you will need to be skeptic. And you should be skeptic of anybody who's in a position of power the way that a government is, and the way that their agencies, who are the arms that orchestrate their power and exert their power upon people. You should be skeptical of those things just for your own safety and well-being.
What is the point? Hundreds and hundreds of pounds of moon rocks and dust. And we have distributed those freely to PhD scientists around the world. And not one of those geologists has said, what is this?
They
This is
prove it to
some-
be fake.
And also and collected on the ice in Antarctica and
Yeah,
in the Arctic as
absolutely.
well. Those are collected. You don't have to go to the moon to get moon rocks. As a matter of fact, all U.S. Air Force photography prior to 1958 shows a flat Earth. Only NASA shows
That's
a
not
sphere.
true.
That's
That is absolutely not true.
Jim. I wouldn't lie to you.
And the other
NASA's lying to you, my friend.
other bit of
Not
proof
myself.
is we have a laser retroreflector on the moon.
That we're using now.
We still use to this day.
It's sitting there.
You can find to the inch how far away the moon
No
is.
pictures of home.
That only is there. And by the
No,
way,
there are not.
My question to you is, why? Why would all the...
See, Jesus Christ. No, they're not. Nope. That's not there. That's not what it is. They're making it up. They're lying to you. You have no reason to believe that. You have no evidence of it. All the evidence points to the contrary on this issue, and you refuse to give it any credit. You can't discuss this with these people because they don't want to hear it, and they just immediately go, no, you're being lied to, not me, though. I'm not being lied to. It's all you being lied to. I don't need to have an evidence, or I don't need to have evidence for it because I'm convinced of it. That's a problem.
These honest, hard-working people perpetuate this massive fraud. Why would they do this?
What's the benefit of it?
Okay, the benefit of it. They make $52 million a day. Follow the money.
No, the little
Follow
guy.
the money.
The little guy.
That's what, then when you say all, okay?
That's the problem. They're not making $52 million a day because the little guy would have to be in on it. The private doesn't know what the general's doing. But who do you think edits the videos? Who do you think fixes the pictures? Who do you think is doing the work? The private is the one getting that shit done. The E4 Mafia is the ones getting that shit done. It's not an officer.
It didn't start out that way. And NASA was not founded to prove the Earth was a globe. It had nothing to do with the way they were founded.
At all.
Are you sure?
Yeah, positive.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not what NASA exists for at all.
Somebody has to be a voice for reason, and somebody has to be a voice for truth. It would be a fantasy to believe that I would.
See? Somebody has to be a voice of reason and the voice of truth. Coming in, once again, I know more than you do. You don't know anything at all. You have nothing to offer me because I'm better than you. That's the attitude.
Change anybody's mind from the other three. However, if there's somebody sitting on the fence, and this is the first introduction to this debate, perhaps they'll hear the reasonable voice and say, that makes more sense than having this pizza-shaped Earth.
I can put myself in the mindset of the other side.
I used to be a ball earther. Everything you say right now is completely what I used to agree to. So I completely understand where you're coming from.
For me, I think the correct way to do any kind of investigation or to examine things is by literally putting yourself in that mindset of the other person. So I do that. I disagree with your position, but I completely understand from your perspective what you're saying.
Yeah. She has a brief overview of what it's like to be in their shoes because she used to think the Earth was round. She doesn't understand the studies that have proved it the way that they do as scientists. She has no idea. Meanwhile, what he said is very accurate. You don't understand the kind of mindset that would put you there and let you believe it, but not understand how you could buy that wholeheartedly. Yeah.
The trouble I have understanding your perspective is, in the modern world, unless you live in a cave somewhere, you have to believe in science implicitly. I met a flat earther, a young woman who said, I don't trust anything that science does. And that's a problem because human beings can't replicate the whole body of science every single generation. At some point, you have to trust what's already been discovered and proven and move on to the next thing. Otherwise, we're not going to advance at all. I mean, when you turn
It's
the
true.
key ignition in your car, you expect the car to start out
And not blow up.
and not blow up because science puts you in that position. So it's really hard to understand how people would know in their hearts that science achieves wonderful things and then just jumping ship when it comes to this other issue.
We're not drawing conclusions. We understand the mechanisms that made that car work. There was no theories and no disputed conclusions involved there. It's not a good analogy. Can I admit a great compromise that we have to experience being?
He is correct. Like his argument for that example is very correct. If you just pick up the manual or the book for your vehicle, you will understand everything about it. You can go through and see how it works because it's a mechanical thing. Now you need to have the engine actually take the fuel and have it combust and not explode and kill you. The thing is, it's perfectly explained in the book, right? Like your pistons are what stop that from happening. They transfer that energy. It is a dog shit comparison to give.
Against the grain people is we have to literally sit in a group and decide whether or not we can afford to have an opinion, and that's tough.
I agree with you there because we're the same thing. I mean, I think skeptics go through this and atheists go through this. I don't believe in God. When I'm around religious people, I take a chance socially when I tell them I'm an atheist. So I know it takes some courage to follow your beliefs, and I appreciate that. But I think I've done a lot of research in that venue too. And it's not something I choose to believe in. It's something I have to believe in based on the evidence.
See, what I get from you guys is that seeing is believing. So how come you believe in God or Jesus? You haven't seen neither of them, right?
I've seen evidence, though.
Well, exactly. So we are looking for evidence. There are many, many other evidences for Earth not being flat. My point is that these experiments clearly show that the Earth is globe. And you don't need to go outside the globe to see it's globe.
It's a
You told me you
theoretical-
want the evidence. If you're
That's
saying
not-
that you look only to see something, then I dispute your belief system in God and Jesus or Jehovah or Buddha or Zarathustra or anyone.
You keep going back to religion as being
Because
our
it's coming
conclusion.
from there.
No,
You think
no.
you,
Oh, wrong button.
I have evidence as being
because
our
it's coming
conclusion.
from there.
No,
You think
no,
you do
no.
have the
I
truth.
have evidence.
She just-
I have evidence.
You
from what
quoted
I
at the
know.
beginning
She
of
pointed
this.
out physics.
You quoted Bible.
Of
That's
course
the
I did, but
reason.
that is not.
See, he has such an anger for them having a belief in their God that he can't let it go. Simply can't. Now, his point of like seeing is believing seems to be what their issue is fairly accurate. And when you superpose that over the belief in your God, it makes sense to do. The problem is, he is so anti their belief and so on his own just, no, that doesn't exist, that's not right, that he is every bit as terrible on that subject as they are on this one.
The only reason I know what the shape of the Earth is, and you keep,
Well-
that's fallacy.
It's not fallacy.
It is a
Actually,
fallacy.
it is not fallacy.
It is a fallacy.
You, I'm a theoretical physicist. What I'm doing is the combination of string theory and cosmology. So we try to understand what happened during the Big Bang, after the Big Bang, or even before the Big Bang. Well, I hope I would be able, particularly to the young generation, to convince them that first they should think critically and don't believe anything. They shouldn't take anything for granted. Look at the evidences and examine those evidences. And throw away those claims that are not evidence-based.
Science, not to put it down, but when you're talking about rocket science, this is very difficult for the majority of people to understand.
Yeah, we're not all rocket scientists. Because that is legitimately a phrase used in the English language. Yeah, well, I'm not a rocket scientist, but here's something I do know. Or I'm no rocket scientist, but that doesn't make any sense to me, right? We make that statement because of the fact that not a lot of people understand rocket science. It's just not understood by the majority of people. The thing is, if you don't know shit about it, why aren't you listening to the people who do?
Designed that way. And so, in a lot of ways, hiding behind rocket science is similar to religion. If you look at the Catholic Church back in the days, only we can interpret the Bible. You have to listen to what we say. So in a lot of ways, we're getting that same notion from science that says only we what the
So the Catholic Church is actually who did that, what she just stated. And they did it by specifically only teaching the Bible in Latin to a society of people that existed in a time frame where only the Vatican used Latin anymore. Excuse me. Only the Vatican used Latin anymore. Nobody else spoke it. Not only did people not speak it, but most of them couldn't read their own language. So they couldn't read the Bible. They couldn't read the text. It was withheld from them by use of a language that people had moved away from and not teaching people how to even read and write their own language, which is why the King James Version of the Bible exists, because King James had the Bible translated into English, the spoken language of his people, so that they could understand it for themselves and not have to rely upon somebody else telling them what this text says. You may not understand rocket science, but if the papers are written in English, or if you can find a translated version, say from French or Italian or German or whatever, into English, you will understand that text. You might not grasp the concepts, but you will understand what the words are saying.
these numbers are. You just need to trust us. But then when we actually do go and test some of their equations and they don't work, does that beg the question for us to go and test it for ourselves? Absolutely.
I would say, one great thing about science is its predictability. Let's for some moment, for a short moment, assume that your model, this flat Earth model, is correct. I don't know, what does it buy for us? What does it predict for us? So my question for you guys would be, next time, bring me something from your theory, your model, that you can predict something which the globe Earth model cannot predict. Then I would change my mind.
I would just say that don't believe anything that I've said. You got to do your own research. And I think what you'll find is that you'll see that a puzzle piece doesn't fit. And the only way you're going to do that is if you put your own eyeballs on it.
I don't blame people for being skeptical. I'm skeptical about a lot of different things. I applaud that instinct in you. But you have to go beyond just not believing in something. Ask the hard questions. Ask what qualifies a YouTuber, a book author, anywhere else you're getting this information. What qualifies them to make wide-ranging comments about the shape of the Earth? Look, anybody who can overturn Einstein or some major theory is going to be eventually written in the halls of science for the rest of their lives. But they have to come up with the goods. They have to show good science-based evidence that what they say is true, and they have to withstand the test of time and peer review and the rigors of the scientific method.
All right. Thank you.
Holly, it was nice to meet you.
So that wasn't a bad video. It's just a show that's clearly going to get the outcome it gets, right? But I mean, come on now.